Nobel laureate once wrote, "We must take sides. Neutrality helps the oppressor, never the victim. Silence encourages the tormentor, never the tormented." This lecture series, which has a very distinguished 34-year history, is that right, 34? Is the embodiment of that idea. Year after year, it attracts some of the top scholars and activists in the field of genocide studies. Year after year, it helps educate our students and our community about something the world must never forget or turn away from in silence. When I was being interviewed for the president's job at Sonoma State over a year ago now, one of the many qualities of the university that appealed to me was its long commitment to social justice. This lecture series and our Center for the Study of the Holocaust and Genocide is the foundation of much of that tradition. Centers like ours offer some of the greatest hope for enlightenment and peace. And as Sonoma State's new president, I'm really proud of that. Our esteemed speaker tonight is a wonderful friend of the lecture series and of the center and of Sonoma State. Her Excellency Mathilde Mukantabana, the Rwandan ambassador to the United States, is a remarkable woman with an absolutely remarkable story. The ambassador is one of the key leaders of the Rwandan community in the United States. She has been a friend, she has been a supporter and a participant in this lecture series for more than a decade. And I understand that this afternoon's lecture, she will present two very special guests, which I just had the honor of meeting. The ambassador is also a member of the CSU family. Just as I'm an alum of the CSU, and all of you will become alums of the CSU, she and I share that. When she and countless Tutsi were forced to leave their schools in Rwanda in 1973 for political reasons, she went to Burundi to finish high school. She went on to receive her bachelor's degree in history and geography from the university there. She came to the United States in 1980 to attend Sacramento State, where her future husband was a professor, and she earned a master's degree in history there with a focus on African American history, and she also earned a second master's degree in social work. In 1994, the year of the infamous Rwandan genocide, when nearly 1 million were massacred in 2 months by Rwanda's Hutu majority, the future ambassador began teaching at Consumnes River College, a community college in Sacramento. She was a tenured professor there for 20 years, and she co-founded the Friends of Rwanda Association, a nonprofit American relief organization to help. She has been a passionate and effective community organizer for several decades, speaking out, organizing, and drawing attention to the Rwandan genocide for most of her professional life. She has won countless awards and honors, been featured at film festivals and international workshops and conferences. At Sonoma State, we want our students to go out into our communities and into the world when you graduate with understanding and the ability to help future generations to understand the past so that we don't repeat it. And that's why we have a Center for the Study of the Holocaust and Genocide on our beautiful campus. That's why we have this challenging lecture series, and why I'm happy to note how popular it is and how long-standing it is. And that's because of the leadership and the passion of many of you in this room who have made such a difference. So we really thank you for your leadership and for that. And that's why the greater Sonoma County community is really a strong partner with us, with the center, and supports so many of our activities and initiatives. And so, without much further ado, please join me in giving a Sonoma State welcome, a welcome back, a welcome home to our ambassador. Thank you so much for being here, and thank you for all that you are doing.
Thank you, Dr. Judith Sakaki, for your kind introduction. Dr. Diane, Dr. Mirna, Dr. Barbara, all my friends from the Alliance of the Study of the Holocaust and Genocide Studies at Sonoma State, students, friends, fellow countrymen, it's quite an honor and a privilege to be here again back to Sonoma State. Because Sonoma is not just any institution for me. It's more than an institution. It has been a family for us. And when we talk about especially the issue of genocide and loss and death, the first people to go are your family. But for the last more than 10 years, Sonoma has been our family. They helped the association. We became part of the study of Holocaust and genocide. They became the anchor. They became really our brother's keeper, if I might say that. So I thank you again for inviting me to come again and be part of this talk. I want to introduce, before I begin, with the people who will be on the podium with me this morning, and it's quite good. One is Simon Mudahogora. Simon was 10 years old when genocide took place in the country, in Rwanda, genocide against the Tutsi. So he saw firsthand how destruction can be. And Ndahiro, my son, who is here, was born in the United States in Sacramento, California. So he became the keeper of the memory by proxy. You know, it's the story. And what he was able to get as a young child who was born during genocide, after genocide, before, sorry. So today we are going to talk a little bit about memory, and it's quite, as a matter of fact, as I was thinking about what to say about memory, it became more problematic. We just commemorated the 23rd anniversary of Tutsi genocide, or genocide against the Tutsi in Rwanda, in Washington, D.C., and in the country. And memory becomes very hard to talk about. I can talk about Rwanda in general. I can talk about Rwanda and genocide. But to talk about memory, you really have to go back and try to stir in your own mind and psyche what you want to remember, even on remembrance base. In Rwanda, we place the act of memory at the heart of our civic life. It's a national project aimed at reckoning honestly with our past. Each April 7th, the day when persecution against Rwanda's Tutsi exploded into full-blown genocide, our nation started to mourn collectively as one. We started the commemorative events in Rwanda and all over the globe for the 23rd time this last week. The killings began on the eve of Easter, Wednesday, April 6, 1994, and lasted for 3 months. April in Kinyarwanda is called Mata. The month of April is Mata. We have names for each month, and Mata means milk. It's milk. So usually, typically in Rwanda's history and in our psyche, Mata is one of the best months of the year. That's the best. And now it has, so collectively now it has become a month of blood. So it's a change even in understanding of our history, because for a long time, Mata is when there was harvest, people could eat, there was rain. But suddenly this month became the symbol of killing. And someone was mentioning that this is the month most genocides in the world actually took place. And then you started to say, do we change in our national consciousness that the month of April is a bad month? Or do we try to exorcise the evil and try to make it again a good month, the way it used to be? Between the second week of April and the third week of May, three-quarter Tutsi population fell victim to the genocide. There was no one who was, whether they were elderly, children, disabled people, everyone was targeted. the churches became burial grounds. Members of the Security Council refused to acknowledge the Rwandan killing as a genocide, lest they incur legal obligations under the Genocide Convention to which they were signatories. And as a matter of fact, the troops that were in Rwanda were withdrawn. The horror was unmitigated, but not inexplainable or inexplicable. For the killing in Rwanda was due less to atavistic enmity than a racist ideology and mythology. Nurtured in the colonial period and abetted by Belgian and later French realpolitik, in the words of President Paul Kagame, all these powerful nations regarded 1 million lives as valueless, as another statistic, and could be dispensed with. And today, as we are here, the world is still discussing whether we should even call it the genocide against the Tutsi. Social reconciliation and recovery entails imagining, remembering, redressing evil. For the 3 months that follow, schools, government, private sector, and civil society engage in dialogue aimed at gaining a greater understanding of the forces that wreaked such havoc on Rwanda. It can be a very, very difficult time for our people, especially for the thousands of survivors for whom the annual commemoration is both profoundly necessary but also deeply wrenching. Remembering is never easy, but forgetting offers false comfort and brings even a greater risk. By consigning tragedy to the dustbin and to fail to grapple with its meaning, we set the stage for the reemergence. In the aftermath of genocide in Rwanda, Rwanda became a failed state. More than 1 million people dead, 2 million perpetrators, no government, institutions were in disarray, no functioning police, no courts, no standing church. At the time, Rwanda seemed destined to become a permanent UN protectorate, more likely, or a perennial war zone. If you had asked me then if our country would re-emerge to become one of the best nation states, we could have smiled at the naivety of the question. Chaos and conflict seemed infinitely more probable. And as we started the uphill journey of rebuilding the country, our leaders had no roadmap. There's no roadmap for reconstruction. There was no historical precedent to help guide in picking up the pieces. No country had endured what we had in such a short period of time. So how do you begin to rebuild? Not only just to rebuild, but also reinventing a country as a unified, peace-loving nation, where it became firstly with explicit acknowledgement that it was up to us. As the Nobel Peace Prize laureate Elie Wiesel said in his acceptance speech, he said that destruction only men can provoke, only men can prevent. We took it a step further to add that only Rwandans can fix this. This wasn't a rejection of help from outside. Many NGOs and foreign governments gave us considerable assistance, and nor does it stem from any false nationalistic sentiment. It was a simple recognition that a durable solution of peace, security, and prosperity for Rwandans must come from us, from within. That we couldn't recover except by our collective endeavors. That is our country, our society, our government, and our history, but also our future. And a collective memory is a prerequisite for understanding where we were coming from and where we were heading. As President Kagame said at the time of the 20th commemoration, 2014, he said, historical clarity is the duty of memory that we cannot escape. Behind the words never again, there is a story whose truth must be told in full, no matter how uncomfortable. He went on to say to seek the most complete explanation possible for what happened. Memory is understanding. By reflecting on the tragic event of 1994, by examining those factors that propelled such horrific violence, by engaging in dialogue and debate, individually and collectively, we build bridges to healing. We forge a new path forward. Memory is justice as well. Through the community-based Gacaca courts, more than 2 million genocide-related cases were heard, with around 60% resulting in a guilty verdict. Many of those convicted serve sometimes minimal or no prison time. It was a delicate exercise, fraught with risk and without a single precedent. How could we deliver justice to millions of victims without mass incarceration? That would harm also our economic prospects, as well as create a society permanently divided between victims and perpetrators. Gacaca arose from the recognition that the genocide in Rwanda was unique and uniquely horrifying in nature. It pit neighbor against neighbor, as the task of killing Tutsis was delegated to whomever was willing to wield a machete or remain at a checkpoint. These were acts of intimate violence sometimes. In many cases, the killer knew the victim. In some instances, they were friends and family. We could not erase this crime from our history without offending the memory of those who lost their lives, but nor could we become consumed with recriminations. Gacaca let us do that. Restorative justice. Genocide against the Tutsi shook us to the core. We are haunted by the memory of evil, but also determined to tame it and mitigate its venom. This memory inhabits us and pervades our souls. It will continue to affect and to cross life for several generations. I'm not a survivor like Simon, who carries with him the memory of those horrible days when his family was massacred in front of his eyes. For indeed, I was not in Rwanda in 1994. But I'm also a survivor for the same reason. If I had lived in Rwanda at the time, I may have undergone the same fate that my parents, brothers, and sisters by perishing in Mayaga. And similarly, my son Ndahiro was born in Sacramento, far from Rwanda, but he was robbed of an important link to his heritage when he lost his paternal and maternal grandparents and most of his cousins. And he's become now the purveyor of memory by proxy. The memory is transgenerational, and it's our duty and responsibility to keep it alive. The memorial activities are hosted in Rwanda because we collectively remember to honor the memory of all the dead and to build a common future as Rwandans. To counter the enduring indifference which kills. As you know, the perpetrator always strikes twice, and the second time it's by the silence that succeed to impose. We develop a collective way to look at our history, and we refuse to be hostage of the past. The development of collective memory alleviates the wounded and sometimes destructive memory carried by the survivors when it's resourced by everyone and carried by everyone. We are also confronted by the paradox of memory. Memory is both accepting to suffer, but also it offers some consolation. It doesn't exclude the possibility of rubbing salt in the wound. The challenge consists of turning our festering wounds into fertile wounds. This task exceeds the nature of survival narratives. It involves the entire nation. There's a philosopher from Senegal, I'm going to read it and I finish with this. He pointed out that the important thing is not only a common memory, but a collective future through the construction of another possible history. How to transform the genocide into a wound that is fruitful is the question summing up the Rwandan problem and where. Rwanda's specificity in the African context and her will to transform the genocide wounded memory into a resource for establishing a new contract of confidence and solidarity between Rwandans raises the question of historical innovation. What should be a major handicap has been transformed into a momentum, into enthusiasm for reinventing donation, citizenship, and the donation state on the basis of a new agreement. Friends, it's even more imperative to preserve our memory as our national suffering sometimes is still under assault by genocide deniers who find perverse satisfaction and personal vindication in a fictionalized account of what happened in 1994. A handful of bloggers and some academics, often closely aligned to the genocidaire, and who found refuge in many Western capitals, engaged in lobbying, public relations, and advocacy efforts to cast doubt on what they disparage as the official account of the genocide. Some even bizarrely contended that it was Tutsi, not Hutu, who carried out most of the killing. Others used creative algorithms to dispute the mortality figures, as if Rwandans are in the business of inflating the number of their dead. At its heart, as with the Holocaust and other deniers, these efforts are designed to make victims of perpetrators and perpetrators of victims. It's a vile repudiation of history, an assault on memory, an insult to suffering. Rwanda is faced with the challenges of making the memory of genocide a resource and has created a unique model of using memory as springboard to reconciliation and country building. And this, we believe, is the best way to face our demons. The concept of Ndu Munyarwanda means I'm Rwandan. That is institutionalized dialogue in the context of national reconciliation, but also is used somehow as a collective therapy, because the people come together and they talk about their history, looks to the future and reject a fixed deadly identity. And it's true that the collective memory that allows us to rethink the need and the duty of living together in the same country. It makes remembering an action and an imperative for peace, unity, and development. I thank you so much. Center in Kigali, you find all the names. There are more than hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people buried on the grounds there. And throughout the whole country, if you go to churches, you find burial grounds that have been preserved as a memorial. And those are very important for our healing as well. Yes, on the 7th, this was the remembrance in Kigali for the 23rd time. The president of Rwanda and his wife, and then all the people who were there. The whole stadium was full with the people coming from abroad, from United States, from Rwanda. But this is it's an initiative that is global right now, and in the United States itself, in all the major states, we have a remembrance time. So from here, I'm going to New Haven at Yale for commemoration of genocide. So it's and at the same time also we are with other people. For instance, we are attending the Holocaust in Washington D.C. this week. I was at the SEDA where I talk, the biggest one in Washington. So we are also reaching out collectively to the other people who are commemorating other genocides and the Holocaust as well. That was a walk to remember, also that take place to remember the genocide. One of the thing I didn't go into is that for memory to be meaningful, is that also there's an institutional memory and institutional accountability to genocide. And the last month, the Pope invited the President Kagame, and for the first time, even though it didn't go too far, but he was able to show the role of the church. Because if you don't account for what the church did or the state did or whatever, that's the biggest impediment to any kind of reconciliation, because the majority of the people belong to those churches. And it's from the authority that we get that collective memory we're talking about. But also homegrown initiatives like Muganda, when people come together for community work, it has helped people to come together to talk, to be able to build a nation and to look at the future of our history that is a positive one. This was last month when, actually this is Umuganda by ambassadors. I was at the retreat for the leadership retreat, and we built a whole school because there are so many people who can finish. Rwanda has saved more than $100 million just by community work. So it's not just for people to go there, but they build the country, and everyone is engaged in this exercise. And 23 years later, if you had asked how Rwanda will be, no one will see that it's one of the countries that is better governed in governance. Our president was selected not long ago to be the one who do the reform for all the African continent. All the head of states elected him to do that because of what he has done within 23 years in his own country. That was destroyed to the ground. And he's supposed to follow up with the implementation. And every single person, if you ask, is looking forward to that, because no one thought if anything, we thought maybe if they don't kill us every day, that's all we can expect. But actually to become the least corrupt country, to grow economically, to engage women where we are the highest percentage in the parliament, all these things came because of political will, but also the people of Rwanda, who felt that the history they are going to build is going to be a better history. And we set a vision. And that vision is building from the chaff, the grain, the bad, the ugly, but we are able to move forward by looking to the future. So it's a nation of young people where maybe tomorrow the story is going to be told by other people who didn't even experience genocide. People like Ndahiro and other people, but but what story are they going to tell? Their story will be different, but it will tell the same story of capacity to rise from the ashes, of capacity to draw from your resilience when you become a nation of people who are together, who, if anything, we remember this period of our history when we talk about when everyone wanted to kill off people, and to wonder how it could have been possible. That's where we want to get our population and our young people to be able to say, is it this country? Why was it possible? And then to ask yourself to take that nation there. So these are women in the parliament. They are very capable women. These are not figurehead women. They've changed the constitution because of their push. There are many stuff on the agenda that has really increased the capacity of women, but also the economic and political leverage because of participation. And it's a very big thing. They are in our police force. The peacekeeping mission, Rwanda is exemplary, and quite frankly, because there are many women in it. So when they go to conflict zones like in South Sudan, they understand what women who are in a conflict zone are facing. You know, rape, when you go to fetch water, all these type of things. And to be there has been one of the most amazing things for the peacekeeping. Last week, the chief of all the missions was named as a Rwandan, because Rwanda is doing very well in peacekeeping. We understood where we came from. And I think we go from a horrible period, but I think that what we can contribute to the world is immense, especially for people who are coming from the same situation and what the world is facing today. There are many things we can do. We've even broken all the taboos. I finish with this one. Usually before, women didn't do the drums. This was a male thing. Now the elite drummers are women. As a matter of fact, they came to San Francisco. They were just incredible. So we have broken the taboos in a good way, not just we are not women anymore. As a matter of fact, it doesn't take, actually become a better woman because you are able to experience and to express yourself in many different ways. And health has been the cornerstone of our development. This is one of the best hospitals for poor people that was built in where there used to be a war field. Now it has become one of the best hospitals with a view that makes people feel better even when you are very sick. And obviously, we also welcome all of you. It's when you come, and when you do come, the first place we'll take you to is to see our gorillas, one of the most attractive area in, to see the, you know, they are pretty close to human beings. And actually, they are more peaceful. So it's good to go and see them, but it's a well-developed thing. So, we just opened a Marriott. We have one of the best biking thing. We just took the cup. So it's a country that is looking towards the future with hope and much anticipation for tomorrow. Rwanda, you know, we are a very small landlocked country, and we have tried to change our challenges into prospects, and our airline is linking all the capitals in Africa, but now it's going to come to New York. So for the first time, and to European nations, making also the stuff. At the end of the day, Rwanda is an amazing country. The people are beautiful, but there was a time, all this was, we didn't think it will happen again, but I think we are in a course to achieve that. Still with many challenges, but we are fine. So I leave the podium to my co-leaders, and so thank you so much for your attention.
Hello, everybody. Hi. Thank you, everyone, for being here, and thank you for this opportunity. Thanks for allowing me to share my story with you. As a child growing up in Rwanda, I had a good life. You know, I grew up in a happy family with my parents, grandparents, aunts and uncles who lived nearby, sisters, brothers. It was a simple life, but filled with love. I could not ask for anything more. Being that I was young, I didn't have much of a responsibility. I spent most of my time playing in the fields while the rest of my parents and the rest of the family were farming. At the end, we would go home and relax. When it got dark, we would start fire, sit around, and it was story time, my favorite. My parents, my grandparents would tell us stories for hours. It wasn't long until that was taken away from me. In the early April, things started getting weird. I remember sitting in front of a home with my grandparents, just relaxing, and we would see our Hutu neighbors walking back and forth in the streets, just looking at our house, looking at us funny, like they knew something we didn't know. I remember asking my parents, why are they looking at us that way? They're our friends. We know them. We hang out all the time. And as always, my parents said, "Oh, don't worry about anything. It's going to be okay. Nothing's going to happen to us." And sure enough, I believed them. Then, at night, we will hear helicopters flying just above our house, very slowly, low. That was especially scary for us because the only airplanes that ever flew in that area flew so high, going so fast, going somewhere else. We had no idea what these airplanes, or these helicopters, were flying so low. Before long, people started dying in our village. This was before the killing was actually permitted. People were only getting killed at nighttime at this time. For that reason, my family and I spent so many nights in the forest hiding from the killers, hiding from our friends, hiding from people that we actually knew. From the forest, we can actually hear them going to our house, searching, looking for us. They couldn't find us because we were hiding in the forest. And they stole everything that we owned. And once they couldn't find us, they actually came looking for us in the forest. We had to be so quiet that the only thing we could hear was their voices, frogs, and crickets. Morning time, we would go back home, like everything was back to normal. Kids went to school, parents went to work. Even though the schools in the north, they were closed due to genocide, in the south were still forced to go to school. In school, it was a constant harassment. All the Tutsi kids were constantly harassed, beaten. I remember this Hutu classmate telling me that I was going to die soon. I looked at him. I went and told my teacher, and my teacher did nothing. He told me to go sit down. I wasn't the only one. All the Tutsi kids went through the same thing I went through. And still, that particular teacher did nothing. On the way home, we couldn't take the normal way home. We had to go through the farms, hoping that no one would see us. If we were seen, we were chased down the street, rocks were thrown at us, and if you were not fast enough and you got caught, you got beaten badly. Things got worse quickly. On April 6th, my sister and I were sent to the borders of Rwanda and Burundi, which is the river separating Rwanda and Burundi, just to see what was happening. The rumor was that anyone who tried to cross the border was killed by the army. All night traveling and hiding on the farm, we finally got to the border. Only by the time we got there, things have gotten way worse. All we saw was wounded people running towards the river to cross to Burundi. We could hear people screaming in the distance. We could see houses being burned down. At this time, we only had two options: go back home to our family and die, or cross the river and live. With the help, my sister and I crossed the river, which at this time was full of dead bodies, and continue on to the refugee camps. At this time, I would like you guys to meet my sister, Regine. Stand up, Regine. After a few days in the refugee camps in Burundi of cold and starvation and searching for the rest of our family, we learned that our parents have been killed. This is something none of us wanted to hear. I was 10, my sister was only 8. A few days later, we also learned that the rest of our family also got killed. Denise, please stand up too as well. Denise was 4 years old when the genocide began. She lost both her parents and her younger sister, and she was left all alone. She was picked up by strangers that will carry her, and once they got tired, they left her at random places until someone else showed up, did the same thing, left her at random places. Denise survived the genocide all on her own at 4 years old. Denise is a fighter. Life in the refugee camps was rough. We did not have any clothes nor food to eat. We had one small tent to share, my sister and I, and a little blanket that was no bigger than a towel. Not enough toilets, meaning that people went to the bathroom outside your tent. The water we drank was fetched from Lake Tanganyika. This lake was also used for laundry and showers. Finding food in the camp was impossible. All we had was corn flour, which we received from the Red Cross twice a month, which we used to make porridge, which you guys probably never heard of, for breakfast, and fufu for dinner. We had to figure another way to survive, at least for the night. Every day, I went to nearby farms in search for food, but a lot of times I came back empty-handed. Every night, we pray God. We pray for miracles. We pray for our parents back. That miracle never came true. To me, it still felt like a dream. I didn't want to accept the fact that that we're alone, that we have lost our family, that we have lost our parents forever. My question was, how can this be happening? The way we were raised, we went to church every Sunday. We were taught that God takes care of his children. In my eyes, my parents were perfect. In my eyes, everybody was perfect. We lost faith. We lost faith in God because I couldn't believe that this much pain can exist. I couldn't believe that God will allow such bad to happen to good people. Eventually, we came to accept the fact that we're alone. No parents, just us. Even though we lost faith in God, we still prayed every night for the same miracle. Please bring our parents back. This miracle never came true. The genocide finally ended. We went back to Rwanda. Our house has been burned, destroyed. So we went and stayed with my grandma. We tried, went to school, but we were just not the same happy kids we once were. In 1996, a different miracle happened. Both my Aunt Josie and my Aunt Mathilde came to Rwanda to see how we were doing, and they made a promise to us. They said, "We are going to do everything in our power to bring you to America." I couldn't believe my ears. Both of them worked so hard. Both of them kept their promise. And here we are. Thank you. In 1995, Her Excellency Mathilde and my uncle Kimenyi started an organization called FORA, Friends of Rwanda Association, which was to help orphaned kids in Rwanda, such as myself and my sister. It is because of FORA that my sister Regine, Denise, and myself are adopted by an amazing family. Our new parents have been everything a child can ever wish for and more. Please meet the parents. These two have sacrificed everything for us. We did not speak English when we first came to America. So at first, it was awkward. They would sit here on a dinner table, have their own conversation. My sister Regine and Denise would sit here and have our own conversation in Kinyarwanda. I remember sitting on a couch with between the two of them, watching Barney and singing the ABCs, learning Mary Had a Little Lamb and all the sounds the animals make. Quickly, they taught us the value of education. We spent many hours doing homework together, taking trips, just so that we can catch up on everything that we have missed. We were homeschooled by our mother for the first 3 months, and then we started school. My sister started 5th grade. I started in 7th. After that, I went to Davis High School, and then went to University of Oregon, which is where I graduated, and now work for NBC. None of this would have been possible without Fora and a great family that decided to give 3 African kids a second chance at life. Thank you so much again. Also, I cannot forget how much our cousins have helped us in adjusting, learning English, and recovering from the genocide trauma. They were our first teachers. They were our therapists. Because of you, we could heal and was able to smile again. Ndahiro, Gabo, Kitego, Gaju, Motoni, you will never understand how much you helped in our recovery. Thank you so much for that. There's no question that my sisters and I have been blessed with a second chance at life. This is something that we'll never take for granted. It is through families and friends. It is through families and friends. It is through programs like this one that's being hosted by Sonoma State University that genocide survivors like my sisters and I, and many other survivors that are able to grow and move on with our lives. We thank you for that. This is a big lesson for all of us. Life is simply not enough unless you give back. Big or small, it doesn't matter. One way I know how to give back is through education. I'm very passionate about genocide and how it affects all of us. I have been speaking at high schools and universities within the states of California and Oregon, and particularly in this subject, how it affected me, how it affected my loved ones, how it affected everybody else who are not here today. We all know that education is a key to future success, and I believe it will help prevent future genocides. We never know what the future holds, but we know who hold the future. If we believe and never give up, sometimes good things can happen. Thank you so much again for inviting us and allowing me to share my story with you. Please meet Ndahiro, my cousin.
Can you hear me? First of all, I want to thank Sonoma State University, the Alliance for Genocide and Holocaust Studies, and all of you, the audience here today, for welcoming me and us and allowing us to share our words and perspective with you. I also hope to hear from all of you as well afterwards. This is my first time speaking to your audience in my position as a genocide descendant. However, it's not my first time being an assistant as well as ally of this community, as I was fortunate enough to participate in a few events conducted by Sonoma. So this is an honor and a privilege to be here. I also want to thank Simon here for speaking and sharing with everyone the firsthand experiences of a genocide survivor. When we speak of genocide and other crimes against humanity, it's really easy to lose sight of the fact that these are human faces that are connected to all of these events. Rather, it's not just easy, but it's more convenient for us to think about, just because these atrocities are more, it's easier to encapsulate academically rather than viscerally. It's easy to get numbers, statistics, historical inequalities, labels, and other metrics in an attempt to understand. But ultimately, the reason why we're here, why we advocate, why we learn, why we act is for survivors like Simon, like Regine, like Denise, our families, and everyone out there around the world to listen to their stories, remember, and understand. It's the least we and I myself, frankly, can do. This was actually why it was a little bit hard to write this speech, because unlike Simon and his sisters, or even my parents and other extended family who lost most of their family, I grew up privileged. I grew up with my family around me, despite the fact that I grew up during the same time period. I was born in 1986, so I was 8 years old when the genocide occurred. Even though it affected my family and by extension me directly, it was also something that for most of living memory, as a second generation genocide descendant, something that seems, I would say, symbiotic in the sense that it's nearly always been part of my identity. The genocide was something that simply was, something that happened. It's normal not to have or to know grandparents or uncles or aunts or cousins that should be there. It's normal to grow up believing your own parents know everything and had life figured out, that they were the most mature and that they were perfect adults because there is no one older than them. And as children, you know, we have this tendency to believe that adults have everything figured out. So it was something as I grew up, as I grew older, it's something that came into mind. How old were they, you know, when the genocide occurred, and how old I am right now? They are only a handful of years older than me. So I was born in 1986, so I was 8 years old when the genocide occurred. My earliest memories predating it, I would imagine, would be very similar to immigrant families around the world. We were raised speaking multiple languages, switching between English and Kinyarwanda, even substituting French when it came to singing children's songs. We would eat the staples of Rwandan popular food like yams and beans and bananas and cassava, yet we couldn't deny ourselves of fast food burgers or the occasional Friday night pizza. Some of us grew up loving to watch football, and we played baseball and children's games in the street with neighborhood kids. Other times we would play and learn traditional dances from the adults, listening to songs from the motherland. I grew up loving both video games as well as listening to Rwandan traditional bedtime stories known as umugani. Even to this day, if you were to ask me to finish the proverb speaking of Rwanda's beauty, that of which is known to all Rwandans. I know how to finish. Imana, also known as God, visits the world by day, but sleeps in Rwanda by night. The juxtaposition of the two disparate worlds were so natural that I'd always say it to a question from friends or, other acquaintances, the question of where are you from? That I'm American, but my parents are from East Africa, right by the Congo. Have you ever heard of it? It was a sense of identity that was imparted upon us by our parents, that even though we may have been born and bred Americans, we knew who we as a people were and where we came from. Myself, unfortunately, I was so young, I don't remember 1994 so clearly. Beyond increased family get-togethers and catching adults such as my mother suddenly break out crying for what I perceived as a child with incomprehension. Because even when April and then May and June and finally July passed of those 100 days of slaughter, our parents always made sure to keep the children, us, protected to maintain the structure and routine of a normal upbringing, even though their world was falling apart. As a child, I may not have appreciated the enormity of the genocide at the time, but all of us as family were swept up in the time of change, leaving none of us untouched. There were not just get-togethers now, but meetings. While we as children played in the background, adults would discuss and make plans for Rwanda's political reality and future. Projects would be drawn up to help survivors still in the country, such as my cousin Simon, whether with money, resources, or even providing a temporary home. And actually, sometimes it was a source of ongoing annoyance for me, having a revolving door of people come live with us, as well as the many meetings and get-togethers. But it was simply something that was. That's what we knew. Most importantly, what developed as a response to the genocide was a greater sense of community. In the beginning, we were only a few families and family friends getting together, but over time, the numbers grew. Due to the convenience, Rwandans traditionally went to places like Belgium, France, or French Canada when they left the countries, just because they spoke French. However, due to our presence here, the Rwandan community here, a growing community of not just Rwandans, but Burundians and Ugandans, among others, came to settle around the Sacramento region in Northern California. In fact, twin communities settled both here and in Southern California around LA. It became the true beginning of a Rwanda diaspora and a legitimate voice on a global stage. The genocide and the splintering branches it extended was something that reached out to all of us, fusing it into our identities like as permanently as a tattoo. This is a new normal where classmates at school wonder at your early interest in politics. Where does it derive from? Why friends always remark on how odd the extent of this family and community is. It's where you get from what some people say your absolute sense of what's right and what is wrong. It's an existence where your eyes are kept open because you don't have the excuse of ignorance anymore. Because words matter, and you know that rhetoric demonizing refugees and immigrants as criminals is only one step away from dehumanizing them. And as importantly, it gives me the reason why I'm standing here speaking before you today. Because as a genocide descendant, I didn't experience the atrocities, but it's both felt and shaped my life. I can't relate to you the experiences and stories that survivors tell you, but I can help amplify their voices. For me and now for you who hear their stories, straight from the source, it becomes both a duty and a privilege to see things with eyes wide open, without ignorance, and that can become the first step to a better world. Thank you. Now time for questions. What do you want? Well, so my father, he passed away in year 2010. It was very, very sudden. However, it's very hard. It's like speaking of my mother because both of my parents, I cannot imagine any greater role models than than these two. They, not just for Rwanda, both of them have done enormous amounts of things for Rwanda. But yeah, I mean, what would you like to know specifically? There's just so many things. Yeah, maybe.
I'm like Ndahiro, it's hard to, Chimenyi, he was my husband, but he was more than husband. He became like, really he studied the whole community. And even as we speak, I always believe that his studies behind us, all of us. He created the entire community in Northern California, and what he was saying, including all the communities of Africans, not just Rwandans. But you are talking about someone who was consumed with social justice. He consecrated his whole life on genocide studies and making sure that it doesn't happen. Prior to that, he tried to bring people together. It didn't happen, and I believe, I don't even know really how to place him. He's one of those people who were the core of many of the things we did for the community, and that is still inspiring people to do what they are doing even today. So he's, and I believe that even when they lost their father and then I left, I think whatever he left for them is the one that is their guiding star. They have that kind of motivation that I think came from that nourishment that was there. And he studied when he was young. When he came to school in UCLA, never went back because the Rwandan government took away his passport when he was 17. And he started to write at 17. So quite a few people in Rwanda thought he was an old man because he started to write way before. So he grew up writing, trying to promote a Rwanda that was yet to come. And genocide came, and then he studied again, and he died at a good time because he felt that the country was on a course to become a better country. But that's pretty much what maybe I can say.
Yeah, I would. Kimenyi was the head of the family. He was what every guy in our family, he was the man that we all want to be. He passed away 2 days actually before my graduation, and the whole family was planning to come to Eugene, and he went to see a doctor, and as Ndahiro said, it was very sudden. During his final hours, he told his boys, Ndahiro and Gitego, who's not here with us today, he said, "You are going to Eugene." So he wanted all of us to succeed. He wanted everyone in the family to succeed. He was never thought about himself ever. He just always put everybody else in front. Food and music. I love food. I, being that I live in Eugene, which is far away from my family, they're here in Sacramento, she's in DC, you know, we're all kind of on different parts of the state. When I come home, my Aunt Jackie over there, my Aunt Josie, they always make great African food. And that always makes me happy. And usually at the end of the day, we end up all of us dancing. You know, it's just in our blood, and we just love food and to dance.
Actually, I feel that the adults in the Rwandan community, they've done a really good job in bringing the same cultural practices and traditional practices from Rwanda to here. Like I said, I remember growing up, we would have family get-togethers all the time where they would actually teach us traditional Rwandan dances. We were raised speaking Kinyarwanda, even though I forgot speaking it, and that's something that I found out is, you know, very common among second-generation Americans or second-generation, where you know, they try to fit in. And I remember as a kid, I did not want to speak Kinyarwanda because I felt it was uncool, because, you know, my friends at school were speaking English and I wanted to speak English. So when my parents would talk to me in Kinyarwanda, I would respond back in English, and that's how I forgot. And, you know, unfortunately, but, you know, that's something for psychology, but I still understand Kinyarwanda, and that's due to what they've taught us. Food, we still eat Rwandan food, and like I said, they even, you know, telling us bedtime stories. They call them umugani, and I remember just asking. My parents were so versatile. They would say, "What would you like it in? And would you like it in English? Would you like it in Kinyarwanda?" And I would be able to choose. I'm like, "Oh, I wanted English tonight." So they were not just my parents, but all the parents, all the adults in the Rwandan community were very good about keeping the cultural practices and just really making sure, you know, we knew where we came from.
I want to say much, but one of the things that we were able at least to make them embrace and now have come to like is their names. You know, Chimenyi insisted that they have to carry Rwanda names. So, and it became a tradition in our whole community. So his first name and last name are Rwandan. They are not, but when they were going through their identity crisis, they were saying, no, I want to be called Steve. Steve, no. But that was something, but we felt that was, now they love their names because they have meanings, you know, and pretty much really, even Chimenyi himself, his first name was Alexander, but he never went by Alexander. He said that was a baptism name. It was a foreign name, but my name is Chimenyi. That's why I never adopted his name. It was like his first name, even though it was the last name. So I kept my own name, Mukanatabana. So it was, but that, the other thing is, all the cultural thing is something we really, actually it's intentional, even to keep it in foreign countries. Every year we have what they call Rwanda Day. And usually they are kept in major cities of the United States and the world. Last time it was in San Francisco, we had about 2,500 people coming. And the most important part of it is to bring and for people who live in the diaspora to come and actually embrace their culture, but also to show off some of our best culture. So we bring them, we are going to have one in Washington, D.C. We had one in Toronto, one in Boston and Chicago, and then Atlanta, then San Francisco. So that's a part of that thing that, because quite frankly, among the thing about the memory, it's a building on the African, on the Rwandan identity, and the abiding principles that we go by, what we call agaciro. Agaciro is the fundamentals. Agaciro is like what you said, democracy in America, like American democracy. For Rwanda, it's agaciro. Agaciro means dignity. You know, if I can translate in English, it's the dignity of the people. And it's something that drives whatever action we do and we pose out there. And it has a set of principles behind it. So it's something that at least we would like our children and the grandchildren to know about. And so far, that's what we've been pushing for. Thank you. Thank you so much. You wanted the young people to respond? Where I can start, but I really believe even the story, our narrative of recovery happened because of the people, the alliances. As I was saying, even really, if I can even see the whole trajectory of my life, to where I was 20 years ago, 23 years ago, to where I am, I cannot separate the incredible influence of Sonoma State. And I'm not saying it because I'm standing here, because the way to talk, because like for instance, when we were creating Friends of Rwanda Association, it had 3 parts. The first part was on relief, to try to help survivors of genocide who were in Rwanda. The second was to teach against genocide. But we were really, it was in innocent efforts. We didn't know how to do those things. We didn't. And I remember Barbara and Myrna sending me even the material when we were trying to come up with even some kind of, syllabus, for people to be able to look at genocide and studies. And then belonging to all the institutions, talking around, coming here, being a part of the alliance. I mean, what I have become as an individual and the process of healing on individual basis, but also on collective level in this area, we can't separate it from what they have done in their partnership. So the young people especially, and I like the way you ask the question, because Rwanda is a young country. About 70% are below 30. Below. So it means that the engagement of especially our youth is really fundamental. Because tomorrow they are the ones who are going to take the reins of the whole country, but also to be able to continue this story of resilience, of to be able to project a better story, a better narrative, to build a nation that is not full of tensions and bringing back all those, all these roots of division and so on and so forth. So we have, and this is why teaching and education, that is transcending what we call academic education. It's not just academic. It's not, but the whole education that we give to our youth is comprehensive, and it starts before they even go to school, at their level, because they need to start learning of how they can live together. What failed in the past. That's why memory is very important. And memory is different a little bit from history, because I think that history is a little bit on the memory of individual memories. It takes out the venom. You write that history, but it's based upon those many different things. So the youth and the partnerships, there was a time when students from Sonoma actually went to Rwanda. Julie and Becky, they went to Rwanda. They went to Rwanda, they volunteered, they did many different things, and I think, especially in the field of your study, Rwanda is a breeding ground for any research you want to do, or any kind of initiative you can start there. And we've partnered with many schools, even in the area, in California, on the East Coast, but Sonoma definitely will be, actually it's a given. I have to tell you that in Mayaga, and Chiaya can tell you this, in Mayaga, where we have the school, there is a big area called Sonoma. Sonoma. Because of what Sonoma did even in helping the school to build and to do those things. So they have been partners for a long time. We can look at otherwise based upon your interests, but definitely there's a room for people to collaborate and to do those things. Thank you. Yes, please. tell them. Yeah. We are taking good notes. Yeah. Thank you. Yes, Denise. Denise. Oh, you? Sorry. Yes, absolutely. Actually, we have what they call the study of genocide now up to the master's program is there. And we've partnered with many institutions like the Shoah Foundation, the one at USC, University of Southern California. Actually, they have done, you've heard that initiative by Steven Spielberg to record all the voices. Also, they are doing the ones for Rwanda. But we have the study of genocide is in Rwanda, but now they have also included them in high schools and primary school. So we have a curriculum in all the schools. But even for the people who are not going to school right now, they have what they call ingando. Ingando is when they take young people, especially the ones who are in foreign countries, they call them during vacation to go and learn about those things. So those are, it's a very, very important thing. We are, you know, that's really the bottom line of our education. Genocide education is part of the curriculum. And also it's integrated when they train the police, when they train the military, every single entity, not just the school, the traditional schools that we are talking about. Yeah. Yes, please. Yes. Yeah? Yeah. Denise, is it me? No. Yeah, yeah. Okay, say it. Oh. Yeah, yeah.
Were she to say anything directly about the current administration, it would be quoted in false news or wherever. And so I think respectfully we might avoid asking that question.
No, no, thank you so much. There you go. Because, you know, for us, and I have to tell you, Denise, we work with the countries. We don't work with the individual presidents. And what I can, that's the only thing. Now, if you want to come and I say something in your ears, that's another matter, but it's not, it won't be on the administration in any case. But it's true. One thing we can say is that, I don't know if you, for Rwanda perspective, if I might say, is that we've decided as a country that we are the ones who have to find our responses within. Because, and then, because we have something to redress and to address within ourselves. But waiting for something from outside, whether it's from partners, that's wonderful, and we are very happy. And we do partnerships that are, and we want to promote partnerships that are of equal value. You come because even if you give, let's say you give me money, but I give you something in return that is also going to be worthy. We don't want handouts. And so that's one of the things that the Rwanda we stand on. We want a true partnership based on equality, based upon respect, but ultimately the Rwandans have to come up with response, and then we find the partners who will come and support the choices we make in the country. You know, and quite frankly, because in Kinyarwanda, I always like to use those proverbs. They say, stuff from the neighborhood come when the rain is over. You know, so you have to find something to protect you from the rain before you wait for other people to come and cover you. But, yeah. Yeah, okay. Yes, please. Hmm?
Where do I begin? Language barrier. When I started school, I didn't speak English. So, I had a lot of misunderstandings. Every time I saw people talking and looking my way, I assumed they were talking about me. So that was a problem. Biggest culture shock, in Rwanda, where I was born personally, it was just Rwandans. There was no culture, no white people, no Chinese, nothing. So it was just me. So all of a sudden being here and I'm surrounded by diversity, that was a big culture shock for me. And it took a while to get used to. And then, going to school, having to learn everything in English and making friends, that was tough also. You can't make friends if you don't speak the same language. But eventually, I got over all those things as I learned more of the language. I was able to relate with people. I was able to communicate with people. We were able to understand each other. As before, it was just, I'm over here, you're over there. So that was the biggest shock for me.
I really, maybe the cultural shock you are asking me is about going to Washington, then California. No, initially, coming to United States, of course, when we came, we were the only family, only Rwandan family in Sacramento. So it was the same, pretty much. But because my husband, Chimenyi, had created the family around him that were beyond Rwandans. So when I came, actually, we didn't have many Rwandans around us. There were all the people from Africa, but also from United States, who were very, very good friends and whose lasting friendship is still sustaining us. So for us, it was, when I came, actually, it was myself to adapt to the family that my husband had created around himself. So pretty much that's that. The other shock was, I'm not even, because really that was not the question. Going to Washington, coming from California, was a big shock. On the East Coast and the world we live in is very hierarchical. It's protocol. It's all these things. I think people here are very relaxed, and even when it's a different. It's almost like two different societies, but it's because of the job people do. I mean, it's I guess the environment people work in and all these things. But one other thing I have to say is, and again, I'm not saying it because it's in this room. U.S. for us, when we came as refugees a long time ago, it was much, much better than going to Europe. Europe, there were commonalities because we knew each other. But it was in that kind of relationship that was crooked. It was from a colonial to the colonized. So it was very, very difficult to pierce and to become real friends initially. Because there was always that element when people were doing this and that, and the openness and so on and so forth. So United States was, when we came, actually, we initially, like for my first 2 years, I thought that in the United States there's nothing wrong can take place in this country, But because of the people, and especially in California, I think the bigger the state, the bigger the place they live in, and the bigger the heart. When one example I can give you, there was a time when we were lost. We used to get lost, taking a walk all the time. Geographically, I don't know why, but we would get lost. And in my experience, always there will be somebody who will actually go with you and say, okay, you can go turn. No, let me take you. And you go together. In Europe, you tried to go and grab someone, hey, how to, they would keep their pockets going, and that was, so it was really like, we would say, wow, this is an amazing state. This is that was then. When you started to discover that there are other forces, but it's in a human being type of format. You don't see it as someone who is closing the door. So that was, if I might, put it a long time ago, that was a long, long time ago in my experience, but that's another life. Yes, please. Thank you so much. It was a very difficult transition for Rwanda. 1995 after genocide, even though we're still talking about infiltration coming from Congo, trying to finish off and so on and so forth, but there was also internal division. Internal division because of different cultures coming back. So you had the people coming back from the region, Uganda, who were Anglophone, the ones from Burundi, the ones from Congo, the ones from Europe, from United States, and so on and so forth. So it was the most diverse population you can find, but of Rwandans. And sometimes people, when you have grown, you bring your own culture from there. Even though you are here, you are Rwandan, but you are also an American. So all those stuff were, for better or worse, what made the new Rwanda. Because initially they were, like rejection, conflict, and so on and so forth. But eventually, I think all this mixture was able to bring all the how would I say it, very vibrant society that we have. That is very diverse. So you have, even in terms of, if you go and you find, you'll find, for instance, people who have a restaurant from Burundi. They call it Burundi restaurant. The other one, they're calling it another thing from where they came from. So to blend that population to be able to come, it took a long time. It took all these things because it didn't come overnight. But as much as there was also the reintegration even of the people who have killed, because there was a strong movement of people coming back from Congo, who were like 2 million people, most of them coming from the killing. It's not mine. I have about 3. One was hidden, that's why. So what I'm saying is that all these people who have come back, so now we are talking about resettlement of the military, trying to blend the military that has participated in the killing and the one that has won the war. But also bringing people together who have been freed through the Gacaca, and bringing even the people you call the Tutsi population coming from all those places. They were not similar in every way. So that, it took a number of years, but now the blending has happened. That means that there was some sort of affirmative action where the regions were included, and were able to be, the people who were Francophone before were able to blend in the military and so on and so forth. But it was an uphill battle that now you can really talk about one unified nation, but it took a long time, the resettlement and stuff like that. Yes, please. Right. Mhm. Yeah, that's a very good question. There's a number, number one, after genocide, number one, the gender ratio was a little bit embarrassed. There were more women than men remaining. So, and I have to start by saying that if there's any group that was victimized by genocide, plus the killing, it's the women. because also the weapon of rape was used very extensively through. As a matter of fact, the inclusion of rape as a weapon of genocide was included because of Rwandan women who were able to go and testify for the International Tribunal in Tanzania, Arusha. There is actually something that came out of it that now they have included within even UN as a part of that. So the women, how would I say it? They were left to fend for a country that was destroyed. Most had lost their children. Most were raped. Most had children as a product of rape. And when we were talking even about reconciliation, really, let me tell you, at the first years when they were really coming up as a country to see how can we even really live together, and then they instituted that tribunal that wanted to bring people together by accounting for genocide. But the problem was, you can bring justice, any justice, but how are you going to bring in the people's heart that forgiveness that was necessary to look in the face of your killer, in the eyes of your own child that you have, that is there, but who is the reality? And I think going beyond the human equation and to decide that forgiveness will come to myself, but also to accept my child the way he is, wherever he's coming from. I think that also expanded our own capacity as a country to forgive. Because that was the most intimate reconciliation you can look at. Because this is, I don't know, we've all heard about rape. Rape is a horrible thing, and it really, it was done because it was killing a society. Once you are able to rape the women, you know that you've been able to diminish that society in many eyes. But that was the beginning, to draw enough strength and force and to say, whether we want it or not, this is what we are left with. We have 500,000 children who are a product. Where are you going to put them? And if we are going to start talking about coming together as people to work, how about my children who are here, who are facing me? Even though that guy has killed my husband and he has raped me. So that kind of, so the women drew the strength. Some were infected with HIV. The biggest associations of women in Rwanda are the ones by women who were what they call AVEGA. AVEGA is a big organization. Women who were infected with HIV were able to create, for all the survivors, but also were able to create their own economic leverage, the social reconstruction, and so on and so forth. So by doing that, they opened their own sphere also in political efficacy. So it was like halfway with leadership that wanted to empower the women. And that was in the program already of RPF. There was a program about empowerment of women. It was there. But now to go to practice, you needed also the group that was there and ready to seize the opportunities, if not to push for them. So they put what you were saying, a quota system, to say since the women were not, represented before, 30% of all the people in decision making have to be women. And that was put in the Constitution of 2003. What happened was that the first, of course, 30% of women were elected in parliament. The next year, the women, because also of educational facilities and because they became bolder and men started to see women were doing a better job, they were less corrupt. Not that I'm saying anything, But what I'm saying is that they started also to vote for them regardless of quota. So 48% in the next election. The third one, now they were running, really vying for those seats on village boards because Rwanda is decentralized and so on. And they were elected by their own people, men and women, because of their performance. Your mom, we just had a commemoration in Washington, D.C. Sorry. But Professor Margie Ensign, who is now president of Dickinson, she's the mother of Catherine. But she made an amazing presentation on the program in Rwanda, the progress in Rwanda. What they call the performance contract, or imihigo, that has made the country to develop. But that is when you sign actually a contract with your mayor, And then you have to, at the end of the year, you have to show what you have done and why you were unable to perform. And that has helped even in electing women in high powers, because when they did, usually they found their performance contracts were up high. So that's where we are. But what is even, and then, you know, you have number one, the willingness to do so. Then you sanction it to the legal process, you put it in the constitution, then the practice comes. So now women in Rwanda, and you know, the mentality changes wrong, because young children who are raised on the lap of women who are capable, they don't even think twice before they can elect a woman. You know, it's as simple as that. Now we have women who are piloting those planes. We have women in peacekeeping who are in Haiti, who are in South Sudan, who are in Central African Republic. We have women in every capacity you can think of. And I think it's because of performance, not because it's affirmative action. You wouldn't put people behind the wheel of a plane if you didn't trust them. So I think it's number one, I would say it's because women themselves open the sphere of influence, but also of the willingness of the leadership and the will of the leadership to do so. That was those two things that push for it. Thank you. Huh? There is equal pay. There is equal pay. The thing, we still have challenges. I'm not saying that Rwanda is where we want it to be. As a matter of fact, we set the vision to what we call 2020, and we want it to become a middle-income country by 2020. And we are almost there. But we still have the overrepresentation of women who are still in poverty, especially in village level, because there are a majority of women who are tending the farms and doing those stuff, meaning that the overrepresentation of poverty is still there. So what is being done is for these women to organize themselves in cooperatives and to get like microfinance. It's one of those things that are being thing. But equal pay in equal job is the same. You know, so those women, some of the major ministries, our top agency for economic development are held by women. So what they call Rwanda Development Board, that is increased, whatever is by a woman, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, of Health, of whatever. So all these people are the same level with men, whatever pay or prospects to make it in the country. Sorry. Which one? That's a good question. The Twa, do you know who the Twa are? In Rwanda, there were three ethnic groups, or the ones that were assigned to ethnicity. There were the Hutu, who were the majority of the people, about 80, the Tutsis, those categorization that we talk about. Then the Twa, that were a very small percentage that was found in all the countries in Central Africa region, Congo, Burundi, Rwanda, and many places. And usually, even in traditional Rwanda, usually they didn't mix. They had their own traditional way of being, most of it being in hunting and so on and so forth. Just like the majority of some of what we call the Hutus used to be agriculturists. But the social system was fluid. People could move from one group to another. So when the ethnic groups, or at least when a genocide took place, the Twas were not even in the picture. They're in the picture that because they could hide the people where they, you know, the ones who were running away, or they could be coerced into participating. But they were not the key players in that particular area. Now we have, in Rwanda, the Twa are part, pretty much the inclusion has taken place, and they are being pushed also to participate in the political life. So they are a part of the political landscape. But before they were pretty much, and now, especially with this divided thing, war in the Central African Republic, where they were pushed, or in the Congo where they were pushed. Now they have also become well settled, within the East. There are no different neighborhoods of the Twa or the Hutu or the Tutsi. That was very something that you need to know. There was no difference in neighborhoods. People lived together. The ones who were settled lived together. So most of the identities were assigned. Sometimes they were very artificial, based upon an identity card. So it was, but